I'm Mike Uyak. I love to try new things, and I've had culinary adventures all around the world, as well as right at home. I've had really wonderful food, as well as some really horrible food. I'd like to share some of my adventures with you, and we'll see if I have what it takes to fix whatever goes wrong. This is Recipe Redemption. Greetings and salutations, Redeemers, and welcome to another episode of Recipe Redemption. I'm Mike Uyak. For today's episode of WTF Theater, I'd like to address the stuff that you either love or love to hate. And I speak specifically of this stuff. Spam. Spiced ham, supposedly. It's got ham in it, but the one thing that I've always had a complaint about with Spam is that it's just too salty and it's super fatty. There is arguably nothing actually good for you in this. But, you know, it's got fat, it's got salt, it's got carbs, but it's a good load of protein because it is a big old slab of meat. But not everybody likes it. Some people love it. As I've addressed in earlier videos, some people grew up with it and it's just a part of their life. And more power to them. Now, over the decades, really, that Spam has been around, there have been a plethora of treatments for it. A lot of them, I'll say about half, use Spam as an ingredient, as basically a flavor component that combines with other things to make a more cohesive whole. Others, Spam is just there, and all the other ingredients are there to cover up the taste of the Spam. In pretty much, they're about 50-50, and they run the gamut. You have your Spam fried rice, Spam musubi in Hawaii, and Korea you have the burajige, the army stew, which I have done a video on, and I will include a link below for that if you want to watch that. There's Spam mac and cheese, Spam sliders, Spam fries, Spam waffles, Spam turnovers. There's a Spam Dandy Lunch, basically a Spam meatloaf with cornflakes as a binder and grilled orange rounds and slices of Spam as garnish. You have Spam cupcakes, which are more like cornbread cupcakes with a cream cheese frosting and fried bits of Spam as garnish. I'd probably stir them into the batter and bake them as part of the cupcake instead. I think that would actually work better, but it wouldn't be too bad. Your Sunnyside buffet sandwich, Spam spread, which is basically processed Spam on toast with hard-boiled eggs and a sauce made by combining mayonnaise, mustard, and chopped olives. If you like Spam, it probably wouldn't taste that bad, except that it's cold Spam. Spam birds. These are basically just slices of Spam wrapped around scrambled eggs. Meh. You have a Spam fruit salad, really a Spam regular salad, since I see cucumber and tomato in that glass, along with what looks like pineapple. This might not be all that bad, especially if you get a bite of fruit with a bite of Spam. The sweetness of the fruit might cut the saltiness of the Spam and make it taste more like normal ham. Holiday snack pie. It's a trap! That's a crust made of Spam spread, filled with a lake of sour cream seasoned with salt and dill, and disguised with slices of fresh avocado and served with crackers. It might be okay as long as your guests understand they need a little bit of each component for this to be close to a complete flavor combo. But there's somebody who's just going to dip it into the sour cream and just end up with a cracker with sour cream on it. The Fiesta Peach Spam Bake, kind of like my barbecued rack of Spam. You slice into a whole loaf of Spam, then insert, in this case, canned peach wedges into the slits, douse it in the syrup and additional sugar, and bake. And once again, sweetness makes the saltiness easier to tolerate. And Spam spread really was a thing. Okay, still is apparently. You can still buy the stuff, though. I've never seen it in a store in Seattle.
I can't tell in this ad if it's just bad coloration that makes it look like, sort of a Play-Doh pink color, or if it actually was that color, but just doesn't look appetizing as is.
Many ways that people have to serve spam, including just frying up slices and eating them all by themselves. But I think, especially fitting with the theme of WTF Theater, the only real way we can address spam is to really take the quintessential uh, cultural icon that is Monty Python and the spam sketch into consideration. For those of you who haven't seen it, I don't actually have a link that I can recommend for you. There's not an official link to it, but lots of people have posted it online. So just go onto YouTube and search for Monty Python spam sketch. There are lots of examples. But for those of you who haven't seen it, basically a couple goes into a restaurant looking to get some breakfast, and their waitress, I believe played by the late Terry Jones, rattles off a list of dishes that contain various amounts of spam, but every single thing on the menu, I believe, has spam in it. So your egg sausage and spam, egg bacon and spam, spam, baked beans spam, and spam. And the last item, which they added for comedic, sort of a comedic punchline, the fanciest thing that they could come up with. Lobster thermidor au crevette with a Mornay sauce garnished with truffle pate, brandy, and a fried egg on top, and spam. So I had to look up a few things because the British have a way of calling things by different names. So a flashlight is a torch over there. An elevator is a lift. A cookie is a biscuit. I'm not sure what they call a biscuit. Actually, I'll have to look that one up. So when it comes to food, they don't have eggplants. They have aubergines. They don't have zucchini. They have courgettes. I don't know where that comes from. I'm assuming French. And so I had to look up what crevettes were, because lobster thermidor au crevette is the dish. Crevettes, as it turns out, are shrimp. Why is it every time I want to record, someone texts me? I don't know. Just luck, I guess. Anyway, so lobster thermidor au crevette with a Mornay sauce. Now, Mornay sauce is basically a bechamel to which you've added shredded cheese, usually like a Gruyere type cheese. So it's still a white sauce, but it's cheesy. Now, lobster thermidor is basically a pan-cooked lobster tail that you then put a white sauce onto, basically, again, a bechamel, without the nutmeg that you usually put in a bechamel. And then you stick that under a broiler until it bubbles and turns a little bit brown, and then it's done. I think we can just replace the white sauce with the Mornay sauce that this calls for. It's going to be interesting to see putting a cheese sauce on top of lobster and shrimp. But okay, they put and then the truffle pate and the brandy is just to make this fancy. I'm kind of glad they didn't put caviar in this, although I suppose it could, because there's seafood elsewhere in the dish. But I'm on a budget here. Brandy, a glass of brandy. Although I suppose you could put brandy into the sauce as well and call it good. But since they call it out separately, I'm going to say a glass of brandy is actually served with this. Fried egg on top, nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to add a little bit of richness. And spam, I'm going to say it's a slice of fried spam, just like any other. I don't know what this is going to be like, but let's just cook this and find out.
Okay, first things first, we need to prep our lobster tail. Just flip it upside down and use a pair of kitchen shears to cut away very carefully at the underside. Just want to try to remove this underside shell. Cut down one side, cut down the other, and that should allow you, with a little bit of coercing, to separate the meat from that under shell. And then if necessary, you can use your shears to sort of clip that away. So now the meat's exposed. Set that aside, and then in a saucier, melt some butter, add some flour once the butter stops foaming. You know the drill, we're making a white sauce here. Stir that around until you start to get a nice golden caramel color, and then add a couple cups of milk. And stir continuously to make sure you don't get any lumps, and to scrape up anything off of the bottom. And I'm going to add a little bit of white wine to this also to just give it a little extra flavor component. And once that comes back up to a simmer, I'm going to start adding my cheese. Now ideally you should shred it. I got lazy and just sort of cut it into thin chunks. It melts better if it's shredded, but whatever, this worked. Just add a little bit at a time until you've added all the cheese and it's all melted. Now set that aside, and it's time to start cooking the lobster. In a pan with some oil, just lay them shell side down. And I actually ran a thumb underneath the meat to try and separate it from the top shell. It'll make it a little easier to eat later on. And then a couple minutes on a side, I kind of want to rotate them so that each side gets exposed to the heat, and you can see the shell turns a nice bright red once it actually hits the heat. And since these, they have kind of a rounded back, you need to actually hold them upright so that the back gets heated as well. It doesn't have to be completely cooked through because you're about to throw this under the broiler, but a couple minutes on each side is probably good. Then I created this little tinfoil boat to hold my lobster tails straight up on their backs, which makes it easy to spoon my Mornay sauce on top of them. A couple tablespoons per lobster tail is probably good. I threw that under a broiler for about 10 minutes. In the meantime, in the same pan, just going to throw some peeled, deveined shrimp and just saute for a few minutes, probably only like about 3 or 4 minutes. These cook really quickly. I just want to make sure that they cook through and get some nice color on them, like so. Don't leave them too long or they become rubbery. Finally, it's just about time to plate. Put a little bit of the Mornay sauce on the plate, and I'm arranging some of the cooked shrimp on that sauce. And what I'm doing is I'm making a couple rows of shrimp to form a bed that will, once again, hold my lobster tail on its back. Like so. Next, I have some fried Spam. I just sliced and simply pan-fried. And some store-bought truffle pate. I didn't bother actually making my own. I could, but it's time-intensive, so I didn't bother. And this looks a little lonely, so I decided to double down. Extra slice of Spam, extra slice of truffle pate, because I'm extra. And oh yes, don't forget the fried egg. Et voila! Lobster thermidor aux crevettes with a Mornay sauce, garnished with truffle pate, brandy, and a fried egg on top, and Spam.
So, that was that. I decided I was going to spare you the ordeal of watching me eat. I don't think it was particularly illuminating to just watch me chew. And also, as it turns out, I spared you the aftermath of eating this meal. I made this for dinner, and I actually made 2 servings so that Chris could share in this with me. I figured there wasn't anything particularly offensive about this meal. It was just really, really rich, and as it turned out, it was a little too rich. Lobster thermidor is a decidedly old school recipe. Not really something that I would choose to make again, really. But it's not bad, but it's you're just putting cream sauce on a lobster tail. Why bother? And to be honest, lobster isn't my favorite shellfish. I prefer shrimp and crab much more, but it wasn't bad. And because I chose a relatively mild, inoffensive cheese to make the Mornay sauce with, it didn't really cover up anything, which was good. The pate is pate. It's good if you like pate. And the spam and the fried egg are known quantities. They certainly not that bad. And I have to say, with everything else on the plate, uh, it helped, especially if if you took bites together with other components on the plate. It tamed down the inherent saltiness of the spam quite a lot. But that being said, there was a lot of salt, there was a lot of fat on that plate, and as originally envisioned, absolutely no greenery on the plate whatsoever. So, because this was dinner, I actually added just some green beans on the side, just for some vegetal component to this. Um, by themselves, each of the components isn't bad. Some are better than others. They're all perfectly acceptable food things on their own. Together, not so much. There was a bit of a clash with some of the flavors, and honestly, the brandy um, didn't pair as well as I thought it would. Uh, they did it because it's more, I don't know, fancy or luxurious than just a glass of wine or something. But honestly, I had just a glass of rosé sitting on the side, and it's basically kind of a white Zinfandel, um, and it matched a lot better. The acidity of the wine was enough to kind of cut through some of the fat and help it go down. Quite honestly, so I did it. Uh, this one can be relegated to the pages of history as just one more silly thing in the uh, sort of legend that is Monty Python's Flying Circus. So, with that, I'd like to thank you for watching. If you have any other ideas for things I should try to redeem, um, any other mysterious film foods that you've seen in movies and television and popular culture, please let me know, and I'll see about doing a video of it. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.